All right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes. Thrilled to have you here. I want you to think of these sessions as a leadership gym, if you will. If you want to get better at something, if you want to get more physically fit, you've got to spend time in the gym. And this is your gym. This is spending time talking through leadership issues, talking through leadership practices, principles, and you're going to build your strength. Just like an extra 15 minutes on the treadmill makes you more physically fit, 15 more minutes thinking about, considering leadership topics and how to lead better is going to make you better in your leadership and is going to make you stronger in your leadership. So that's the purpose behind all of these sessions. So one thing that I like to start off with while we queue up some people is to deal with some questions that I got offline or that I didn't get a chance to get to last time. Patty, great to see you here as always. I hope things are going well out there in New York. And so yesterday I just missed a question from Rachel, and it was a really good question out there, and it was, how do you deal and how do you get the feedback from your team without it turning negative in regards to management and leadership? Or how do you just turn it from not being into a bitch session, for lack of a better term, when you're getting that feedback? The first thing that I would recommend is actually being upfront with the feedback and say, you want 3 areas of feedback or 4 areas of feedback. I want to know what's working better than expected or really, really well. What's working as expected? What's going right out there? What's not going well, what could be improved, and what is just abysmal. And so you set the stage for everybody on what feedback you're looking for. If you want something, ask for it. And so if you want positive feedback, ask for the positive feedback. The other comment in regards to getting feedback is that if you haven't gotten feedback from your team in a long time, usually it will turn negative right off the bat because that's what everybody keeps an eye on. It's what most leaders make a mistake of keeping an eye on, is where are the problems that I need to fix, and they don't look for the successes that they can double down on. Sandy, good to see you here. And as we get people jumping on here, if you have any questions or issues, drop them down into the comment section. I'm just fielding some stuff from the last session I didn't get a chance to get to while we queue up some people here. So if you want positive feedback in a feedback session, be clear on asking for it. Be sure you're allowing time for them to talk about problems as well. But realize if you haven't asked for feedback in a while, you are likely to get a lot of negativity, and that's fine. The first time you get feedback, you get a bunch of negative stuff. But if you take action on all of that feedback, and then you come back to the team a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, and have a feedback session, there is going to be less negativity because you've already handled so many of those things. That's the way it works with feedback. The more you ask for it and the more you engage, the better it's going to be, the more positive it is going to be as people give voice to some of their concerns. The other question that I wanted to follow up on was actually a follow-up I got a direct message in regards to a question I had yesterday in regards to dealing with employees that are just difficult to deal with. And I talked about how you're not going to get along with, your personality is not going to mesh with your team. And there's going to be a certain subset of your employees that don't like you. Regardless of how great of a leader you are, there's going to be some people that don't like you, and it makes that relationship difficult. But it is important that you continue to lean into it, because what happens too many times is you have somebody that you don't like that presents difficulties for whatever reason. And what happens is your communication atrophies with that person. You step away. You try not to deal with them. It's natural. You don't want to put yourself in an environment where you're uncomfortable. But as a leader, you need to lean into that and make sure that you are spending that time. So the follow-up question was, great, I need to spend that time. But in many cases, my time could be better spent elsewhere. And it's difficult, even though I can conceptually realize that I need to spend time with that difficult person so that the relationship at least stays the same and doesn't get worse. It is difficult when I see opportunities to spend my time better elsewhere. And that's a great follow-up and a very fair follow-up to my feedback on that. What I would recommend in these cases is that you look for those 80-20 opportunities where you can spend 20% of the time and get 80% of the benefit. And this can be, I'll throw out some examples, and it may not work out, but popping in and just saying hi in the morning. Hey, Cameron, how's it going? How was your weekend? Those little things help ease that communication. Likewise, it may be that your one-on-one time can be more structured so that you can get across some of the things that you need to get across. So I'm not saying spend an outsized amount of time with those individuals who are difficult, who you don't get along with in the workplace. Again, very natural. But look for those opportunities where you can invest in that relationship in a time-sensitive manner so you can spend that time with those positive people who you are going to be able to enact change with. But don't make the mistake of letting that relationship atrophy. That can be a huge detriment to your leadership. So I've got a few questions here that have popped up, and I did want to comment before I threw into the questions here. Up in the description here, I'm doing this session on Facebook Live for those that are tuning in on YouTube and on my podcast. This is a recording. If you want to be a part of these live sessions, jump over to my Facebook page, and that's where I conduct all of this because that's where most of my engaged audience is. But I did want to call out the podcast. Up above, you have a couple of links for iTunes and SoundCloud. I would love to get some subscribers on that podcast and SoundCloud. You can take these sessions on the go, on your commute. Start thinking about leadership as you're going into the office or as you're coming away from the office, and you'll continue to build that leadership muscle, and that's what I'm here to do. So Sajid has the first question for us, and it's, if one of the team members doesn't respond as like others after several times given instruction, what to do with him and how to guide him? So one of the most difficult aspects of leadership is that you're dealing with human beings, Sajid. And human beings are individual. They are unique. We aren't robots. And that's a good thing. But the struggle for leaders is that great leaders can be chameleons and can change some of the ways that they direct some of their feedback, that they direct some of their direction and their asks of other individuals. And they present it in a way that is going to get the message across. And so I'm not surprised that you went out with a directive and some of the people didn't resonate with that, and you continue to double down on that and go out with the same directive in the same way, and it's just not resonating. Look to do it in a different way. People have different communication styles. A lot of times people like to read it in a memo. Some people love to have that morning stand-up meeting where everybody gets their updates in a circle. Other people want to get an email. Other people want to get a phone call. Other people want it face-to-face. You need to be able to adjust to your team to get the results that you're looking for. And I wish that there was that silver bullet that just handled everybody, but rarely is there an instance where one of your communication styles is going to work for everybody. And so you need to adjust. So try it in a different way. One of the best ways to do this, if you're kind of lost as to how exactly to get it across, is to bring the employee in and just ask them, hey, Cameron, I know I went to you with this directive, and I followed up a couple of times, and we're still not, I still don't feel like it's getting through. Is there a better way to communicate, or are there any struggles? Ask them questions and bring them into a dialogue, and that'll help you in the future adjust to this, but also highlight to the team member that when you give those directives, you're not going to back down from those. You're going to keep going forward with those. So I hope that helps, Sajid. Angela has the next, and I hope I'm saying that right, question for us, and it's, how do you handle team members to accept changes and not to negatively influence other team members? Great question. They are difficult to deal with and starting to affect the team. I was actually considering this morning in regards to the topic of change management. I have a talk that I'm going to be giving in Washington, D.C. at the end of this month. And one of the most important things in regards to change is to bring the employees in and over-communicate these things. You want to be in a position where they have all of the information, all of the reasons why, where the obstacles lie, what the project plan looks like, the training. Kill them with information. We live in the information age. Everybody wants more information. And in a vacuum of information, when we don't have that information, we get more fearful of those things. And what that does is, A, it helps you not kind of foster people who are going to be resistant to change because they understand the reason why. But those people that are fearful of change, and again, you're going to naturally have some subset of your employee population that's like that, you are building up the defenses for everybody around them. You know what, I'm really freaked out about this new program that's going into place. I think it's going to replace us. Well, no, it's not going to replace us because Angela said that we aren't looking for any performance increases in regards to this new program. It's just going to give us better reporting and access to the data. And so you're able to build up those defenses around people. When you have a problem with change, you almost always have a problem with some aspect of communication. So going through the change, bring people in, have follow-up discussions, make the rounds and say, hey, how's it going with that new system? Or, hey, do you have any concerns or questions in regards to the new system? And one of the best things to do when you are questioning your team is to actually, because you know, when you're dealing with your team and you ask them, hey, do you have any problems with the new system? The answer is going to be no, I don't have any problems with the new system. That's the easiest way for the employee to get their boss off their back and get back to work. What you do when you question your employees is you seed the argument. So, hey, do you have any questions or concerns in regards to the new program, new system that's rolled out? No, I don't. Okay, well, good. Now, you don't have any problems with the login screen, because I know that Cameron and a few other people have mentioned that there's issues with the login screen. No issues with the login screen. Well, what about the reservation system? Have there been any problems? I hear it's been lagging a little bit. Well, yeah, I noticed that it was lagging. You give the person a couple of bites at the apple. If you want feedback, okay, and if you're looking to increase communication, I'm really hitting this, but this is a great topic for everybody out there if you want more engagement with your team. When you ask those questions, have those follow-ups in your back pocket and give them a few bites at the apple of creating that dialogue. When you give them that it's easier for them to follow up with something new. And you can take that to the next person and the next person. But issues with change are almost always issues with communication surrounding the change. Have group meetings, have one-on-ones with people, walk the floor and see how it's going, give them opportunities to communicate, and you'll find that you have less of those people that are against the change because they have the information surrounding it, and those that are lose their influence because everybody else has more defense against that sort of negativity surrounding the change, and they see the positive aspects of things as well. Patty, so thrilled to see you subscribe to the podcast. Again, those people that are jumping on, I've got the links up there. Take these sessions with you on the road. It's just a great opportunity for you to develop your leadership and get you in the practice of thinking about leadership topics. And that's definitely going to make you better as well. Sajid, I'm glad you liked that. I'm glad that worked for you. Peyton, thank you so much. Really appreciate the subscribing to the podcast. It's something I'm really excited about. It's something I've been thinking about and working towards for a couple of years, and I think it's going to have a big impact on a lot of people, which is why I'm here. Deep has the next question for us, and it's, at times, despite being a leader, you feel like you are not having confidence. How do I keep the momentum? And please suggest a few good leadership books. Great couple of questions there, Deep. So I'll tackle the books first. And I am considering doing a kind of book series through these Mentor Minutes as well. More to come on that, still kind of fleshing out the ideas behind that. But I will give you a few leadership books that pop up to mind. I talked two classics. My number one and number two books that I ever read in leadership, and they're kind of the foundations that a whole bunch of other stuff comes out of, is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That talks through communication, and that talks about relationships, which is so important in leadership. The second one is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Love that book. It has a lot of applications in your personal life as well as your professional life, and it's absolutely fantastic. The third one that I threw out there, the new one, is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and his partner in crime. I can't remember what the name is. But Extreme Ownership is a really powerful book with a powerful message. So those are the three that I would look at as far as books are concerned. What you need to understand, Deep, is that everybody who is tuning in, all of your fellow leaders from around the world that are tuning into this session, go through that same thing where they don't have the confidence in their abilities, in the direction that they're taking. It's a very human aspect of things. You're not going to always be hyper confident. What I will tell you is that with time, it does get better. As you put in year 3, year 5, year 10, year 20, you do get more confident because you've got some more experience. And that's where it comes in. But when you have that concern in regards to confidence, in your decisions, in your actions, in your leadership. That's a challenge to yourself to get in touch with your core principles. Why are you there? Why did you accept this leadership role? What is important to the organization? Are your decisions aligned with what is important for the organization? Are they aligned with your core principles? If they are, then you can move confidently. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes, but it means that your mistakes are justified with logic, not necessarily emotion. You want to be in a position where you can move boldly forward because you know that I am doing this to help with the customer satisfaction scores, and I know that pulling people off the phones for 3 days might hurt the amount of people that we're able to service, but in the long run, that's going to increase our customer, satisfaction scores. And so you can move boldly, and it may come that a month later, your VP goes, hey, what happened in this situation? Well, I pulled the people off the phones for training. Well, why'd you do that? Well, because I was doing customer support training, service training, and I thought that that was going to help our numbers. And it did, or it didn't. And whether it was a mistake or whether it was a success, you at least know the reasons behind it. So when you have that lack of confidence, get in touch with your core principles, get in touch with what's important to the organization, and move forward from there. Now, as far as keeping the momentum going, a lot of that comes out of those decisions that you're making as well. Another great book, actually, is Peaks and Valleys by Spencer Johnson. I love that personally, a great book. And what it talks about is this momentum question and how I'm going to answer it. And that is, everything is going to ebb and flow. It's going to go up and down. Leadership, life, it's a roller coaster. What you do at the peaks and what you do in the valleys determines how long you stay at that peak and or how long you stay in that valley. And so if you want to keep momentum, you have to keep working momentum. You have to keep making those decisions that move things forward in the organization. And that's what's going to really help you out and help you keep that motivation moving forward. Hope that helps, Steve. Great question. Love it. All right, good. And Angela, glad I was able to help you. And Damun, good to see you here as well. So if you have any questions out there, go ahead, drop down into the comment section, ask the questions there. I did want to follow up with a question that I got through direct message, and I wanted to get to it anonymously here. And that is how to cope with a stressful and demanding boss. And I think most of us can relate to that at some point in our careers, dealing with a boss who just seems to add stress and who is very demanding. What you want to do is first realize the situation that you're in. You are not in that ideal situation. I want you to separate the ideal from the reality. So you have a boss whom perhaps isn't a great leader for a number of reasons, and this is one of those. Because one of the big frustrations is you know how things are supposed to be. You know how the boss is supposed to make you feel. You know what they're supposed to do as far as giving you feedback, that sort of thing. And it's frustrating when you don't see that. So separate the reality out from the ideal. Then, once you've gotten that emotion kind of tucked away, look at those hot button issues. Look at the past history where you've been under more stress, where the boss has been more demanding. And what you're looking for is you're looking for what's important. What are they demanding about? And you're looking for how they push that stress in your life. So I've personally, in my career, had bosses who were, I don't want to say demanding and stressful. I just hated the fact that deadlines seemed to magically change and resources were taken away. That's a very common one. So deadlines get moved up. Resources get taken away so you can't actually do your job. But I was able to recognize some of those things. So if it's timelines that are adjusted, know that he or she is probably going to ask for the deliverable sooner rather than later. And so you push up your internal timeline so that you don't face that stress. If they're going to take away resources, then realize that that may be something that takes place. And what you do with this is you then communicate further to them. Okay, great. I'll get this handled in the next day. I know it was originally promised at the end of the week, but I'll handle it in the next day. What I do need to do is move this back to the next day and this day. Is there any wiggle room there? So you kind of talk it through. And Everybody out there might be kind of rolling their eyes at this going, well, that's never going to play. They're always going to want everything at the same time. And that may be the case. But some of the time you're going to be able to get that reprieve or get ahead of that. But realizing the situation that you're in, the common factors that contributed to past situations helps you get ahead of that. And if you can get ahead of that, that decreases that stress. The boss may be just as demanding, but you're able to decrease the stress because you're able to see the situation for what it is and anticipate some of those things as it is. Not a fun answer to give necessarily, but one that I hope you're able to put into practice. Great one though. Coming at you, how do you stay organized? Great. Whoa. Sorry. Once in a while when I scroll here for questions, it pops up something I don't want it to. So Tawanda has a question. So many things coming at you. How do you stay organized? You set aside the time. It is all about focus. Time management, for everybody out there, time management is all about priorities and it's about focus. Those two things. So when you have a number of things coming at you, that's where those two areas both get marginalized. What I tell people to do is take the first 15 minutes of your day, focus on your stuff. All right, your most important items, take it for yourself. Don't even open email, because as soon as you open email, there'll be a ton of other people in there with their own priorities that want help with something. But take that first 15 minutes of your day and work on your priorities and get started. But the principle that I'm getting at is as things are coming at you, you need to set aside those times to reprioritize so that you're focusing on the right things. Okay? So take a time. Maybe it's just before you head out for lunch. Okay, this is what's happening. This is what I'm going to tackle next when I come back from lunch. Great. Do that at the end of your day so that you know what you're going to tackle in the morning. But set aside those couple of minutes to reprioritize and regain your focus. Okay? The other thing that you want to do is you want to really try to cut down on the multitasking wherever possible. And I'm going to tell you about a couple of principles that will help with that so that you can maintain that focus. Multitasking is all about losing focus. And when you lose focus, you lose productivity. It may feel like you're doing 3 things at once, and you are, but those individual tasks may take 15 minutes, 5 minutes each, but together it takes 20 minutes to accomplish, so you lose time. What I recommend is when people bring asks for you, or people knock on your door, hey, I need to come in, I need to ask you something. Can you wait for 2 minutes, 5 minutes for me to finish this up and then I'll come get you? Now, that seems to go counter to servant leadership and what we're supposed to be there for the team. We're supposed to have the open door policy. But in most organizations and for most leaders, I think that's gone too far to the extreme, where we're too open and we put all of our priorities subservient to everybody else's. And that's not going to be healthy for the organization, let alone for yourself and your own productivity. People wait for you all the time. People wait for you while you're in a meeting. People wait for you while you're at lunch. People wait for you when you take a day off. So asking somebody to wait 5 minutes isn't the worst thing in the world if you follow up with them. And that's such a key. If somebody follows up with you, then you don't mind the fact that they pushed you off initially. So follow up with that particular individual. 5 minutes. Hey, take a seat. I'll get to you in just a second. I need to finish up this project and send it out. It'll be 2 to 5 minutes. The other thing that I want you to do is I want you to focus on batching your reading of email. If you've got one of those screens that kind of pops up, I'll kind of imitate it here, pops up at the bottom right of your screen when a new email comes in, disable that. Look at your emails when you're done with something. That way you're not interrupted with something, and that's going to get more things across the finish line. Part of the issue with so many things coming at you in the middle of the day, and hey, everybody's dealing with it. We all get too many emails, too many texts, too many asks. All right, every single person out there is dealing with this same thing. The way to do that is way to deal with that is to try to work on your focus. And the simple thing of turning off that notification and having a different screen up than email while you're working can be huge for you as far as getting those things across the finish line. Because part of the reason you have so many things coming at you is because you haven't gotten the things that were already on your plate off your plate. Too many of our to-do lists are in a wild state of half-finished items. So finish those items, get them off your to-do list, and that'll clear out a lot of the clutter that you're dealing with your day and with your brain. Hope that helps. Deep, I'm glad I was able to help with that. Maria has the next question, and it's, I have a colleague who doesn't respond to emails and wanted always to discuss verbally. I am always on a situation whereby I have to formalize everything we've talked about. It's quite frustrating on my end because the issues we tackle deal with safety. So what will I do to get him to at least respond to my email? My first response, and I'll see if I formulate another one as I go along with this, is to tell the person, I need you to respond to these emails. I need a paper trail that I have followed up with people in regards to safety. This is safety. You know, you're dealing with a big issue there, and use that big issue and the importance of that issue to make it a little bit easier to be transparent. It is far easier for you to read the email, take a look at it, say yes, than it is for us to have a 30-minute discussion and me take 10 minutes formalizing it and then sending it over. Or the other way to do this, Maria, is to actually flip it. So you can have the verbal discussion, but they type up the email. Don't do it yourself. Have them type it up. Then you critique it, you send it back, and all of a sudden, that comfort that they wanted from that the verbal discussion is balanced against the work that they're going to have to do if they have it. I'm not against, especially in regards to safety, if somebody's not clear on something, then absolutely they need to follow up on that. But if you can cut that down by half, that may be hugely powerful in cutting down the amount of time that you spend on these issues. But be upfront and say, hey, I need this. This is why I'm always sending you follow-up emails, is because I need that paper trail so that everybody knows that I've followed up with everybody in regards to this safety issue. So in the future, we can talk about it verbally, but I want you to send me that email. And it may be something that you have to keep following up on. It may be something where you have to make it really uncomfortable for them, where you're working next to them while they're typing it up, where they have to stay late and type it up. This situation, you've just got to figure it out for your own organization, how exactly it works. But be very upfront with the person and say, I've adjusted how I communicate. I've adjusted what I include in those emails. If there is anything that's unclear, then let me know. But know that you're going to type up the follow-up to that so that we have that paper trail and that assurance. This is that aspect of tough leadership. And I know a lot of people might be bristling at that out there. But this is where you stand firm on something and you hold people accountable. And people don't necessarily like it. Your employee isn't going to necessarily like it. But if they understand why it is that you're doing it, they will respect you for it. This is where the right decision always pays off in the end. People don't like it in the short term, but they respect the reason and the fortitude that you took to do this particular thing. All right? And it teaches them responsibility. And if they're growing, they're going to be more satisfied with their work. All right, so I'm caught up here on the live session. So if you have a question, drop down into the comments section. I will answer it in real time. And there was one more question I didn't get a chance to get to yesterday that I wanted to follow up on. And that is, how do you manage remote teams? It's surprising I don't get this more given the environment that we find ourselves in, where a lot of people are working from home or in dispersed groups, or technology has allowed one manager in a unit to manage 8 different locations where they couldn't have done that 10 years ago. The key to managing remote teams is communication. And you've probably heard this already, but I'm going to simply reiterate it. That's the real struggle. There is an enormous amount of nonverbal communication that takes place when everybody is co-located. Everybody sees what mood you are in as the manager when you walk through the door. They overhear issues that are going on. And so it's important that you set up, invest in communication. So if you're going to have one-on-ones every 2 weeks, do them every week instead of every 2 weeks. Instead of doing them over the phone, look to do them in a video conference so you can see the person, so they can pick up on your body language. Set up Slack, Skype, any of those instant messaging things Set up groups so the employees can talk to one another. That's one of the big things that gets missed, is the collaboration that needs to take place in the office, and the collaboration in a fun environment. So make sure that you've created a group where they can all chit chat together. Will you have to monitor it occasionally? Yes, of course you will. But if you were in an office, would you have to manage disputes between people? Yes, of course you would. Might it happen more in a remote environment? Maybe, maybe not. But that's the environment, and that's the kind of cost for the benefit of having a dispersed workforce. So really double down on that communication. The communication ladder I've talked about many times, and it's included in my book, The Roadmap. And it's, as you move up the ladder, it starts with a text, and then it's Skype, and then it's email, and then it is a phone call, and then it is in person. So when you are working with a dispersed team, look to take your things up the ladder. If it's bad news, make a phone call instead of sending an email. I mean, these are some of those basics that everybody knows, but you know what? It's sometimes difficult to put into practice sometimes. So move your communication up the ladder if it's dealing with emotion, if it's dealing with bad news, all of those things. And I think what you're going to find is that you're able to manage those dispersed workforces, and a lot of them, because of that improvement in communication between management and employee, I'm seeing a lot of those dispersed workforces that are actually extraordinarily healthy, and perhaps even more healthy than they would be if they were all coming into the office. So appreciate everybody that tuned in today. Again, if you didn't check out the podcast up above, the links are there for you to sign up and subscribe to my podcast. I would love you to be able to take these sessions with you on the road and just take your mind through the verbal exercise of leadership and putting principles into practice in regards to specific situations. So thanks again for everybody. So with so many, I'm going to go ahead and handle Tawanda here just briefly since she popped in. How do you get that time back with so many meetings, open door policy? How do you get that time back? Really great question. And I tackled it. You ask for that 5 minutes. Okay, you ask for that time to finish things up. Again, if you get back to people, they won't mind. In a lot of cases, I tell people, if you need the time, take the time away. Take a lunch at Starbucks. Do 30 minutes of lunch and 30 minutes of work at Starbucks. Find yourself in a conference room away where you can get that time to yourself. Now, in regards to meetings, those that you control, see if you can start ending them early. See if you can cut back on that invite list. Almost every meeting that is out there can be cut in half as far as the time that it takes to do it. There's just so much informal stuff that goes on, which is great, don't get me wrong, in some aspects, but it is a time sucker in regards to a number of things. So in regards to meetings, look to cut down half the people that are in the meetings, half the length of time that people are in those meetings, half the frequency of those recurring meetings. If you have them every week, maybe every 2 weeks instead, and all of a sudden you started cutting down those meetings. And the other half is the half of the meetings that you don't even need to have and that can be covered in an email. So look to take charge of some of those things and you can get back some of that time to Wanda. Great follow-up question. Really appreciate it. All right, thanks everybody for sticking with me through all of that, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.